Hey everybody, welcome to the morning market briefing. It's Thursday, May 21st, 2026. Hope you are doing well out there. We got two Tomcats in the house, Thomas Klecker, Tom Russell. How we doing, boys?
Big day. A lot of good news today.
A lot of good news. Let's jump in with SpaceX. SpaceX filed for the IPO. What's the date? What's the launch date of this rocket?
So it seems that the official pricing will drop on the 11th, and then they will go public on the 12th. That's the latest I asked Grok information, because I've been asking Grok for quite some time now. We're actually about 2 weeks ahead of schedule when I put a gun to Grok's head to make it choose an exact date. We were originally somewhere in the
Poor Grok just gets abused.
June 28th range, but now it looks like June 12th is going to be the blast-off day.
And we're thinking 2 trill?
Yeah, so we'll know officially on the 11th, but they're estimating it's going to be between $1.5 and $2 trillion. But it's going to be trading at what I would call a PE of infinity and beyond, because they are not actively making money at the moment. They have a lot of revenue, not the kind of revenue of other $2 trillion or $2 trillion valuation companies. But I mean, I think like Tesla at the beginning, Tesla didn't make money at first, then they were valued purely on hype, and they've kind of grown into their valuation. You could argue it's still not defensible. It's still very high, but
it's a lot lower than it was.
There are a lot more Teslas on the road now than there were in 2013 when that was like the hottest stock in the world and everyone was obsessed with buying Tesla stock, and that's when they were unprofitable. But 10 years later, they're a pretty viable car company with some notable add-ons with the future of robotics.
Yeah. The SpaceX situation, Thomas, you said you wouldn't buy it at an IPO. You scared? So you can say you're scared.
I'm scared.
We're not even talking about client accounts. We're talking about just personally. You're personally scared.
Yeah. I don't know.
What are you scared of? The vast unknown of potential.
That
afraid it's too cheap at $2 trillion.
Yeah, it might be too cheap at $2 trillion.
I mean,
I'll buy the $6 trillion company.
We talked a lot.
Time to get in.
$500 billion.
We talked a lot about incentives with the now officially failed GameStop takeover of eBay, but the compensation situation for Elon Musk is very similar, where he is going to get huge tranches of shares as compensation should they hit certain landmark valuations and whether or not they have an active colony on Mars. So I think, he's been very adamant about being engaged and wanting to grow companies and do unbelievable things, and he needs that carrot. And so the carrot for this is he's got to make this thing massive. I mean, you're talking like upwards of $10-15 trillion in valuation, which is, right in line with the current GDP of the United States.
That'd be sick.
So, I mean, it could be a huge company. It could be a flop. But at the end of the day, he's going to cash out at least a little bit and make plenty of money. But they're going to have 2 shares, so he's still going to have controlling interest of the B shares, which would be the voting shares. I think the second largest shareholder is a venture capital firm that owns like 7%. But Darren Vell tweeted this morning, but he was like, expect the next few people to be buying sports teams over the next 20 years to have been early investors in SpaceX.
Let's go.
Because he obviously very bullish.
Yeah, very. Here's a hypothetical. Would you rather be the richest man on Earth or own Mars?
Ooh.
And in a world in which Mars is colonized.
Somewhere where you can go?
Yeah.
I mean, owning Mars would be nice. I mean, if you look at the British royal family, most of their money comes from just owning England. I mean, they technically own most of it, and they get a lot of revenue from being the largest landholders, and they get a lot of kickbacks from a
lot of royalties.
The government pays them money to maintain their homes.
What a life.
Which is nice for them. So I think owning Mars would be nice. It depends. How nice is Mars in by the time I die? I don't think it'd be so nice.
No. And I think it'd be pretty dependent on, it could be pretty lonely up there.
Yeah. I mean, like
over there. I don't know how you position it, but it'd be pretty lonely if you're like, I own this place and it's sick and I've got all these toys and everything's cool and no one's here.
Yeah. I mean, people forget that Warren Buffett has been very adamant that there was someone who owned Manhattan and they sold it for a very small amount of money, and that turned out to be a bad deal. So if they just maintained possession of over Manhattan, the world would look very different.
Yeah.
So, you can just take that with what we will, I guess.
Yeah. Let's talk quantum computing.
Yeah, so this just drops within the last hour or so, but Wall Street Journal is reporting that in line with the CHIPS Act, the U.S. government is going to be taking a $2 billion stake in a number of quantum computing companies, with about half of that going to IBM and the other half being split among a number of companies that I will hand up never heard of, a lot of small cap computing companies. But the idea is that, like the chips manufacturing and foundry business, they pushed into Intel. Intel has suddenly become a massive return in investment for the U.S. I mean, same with MP Materials. All these companies that the U.S. is taking a stake in because they're either critical infrastructure or something they want to dominate the economic landscape in. Now, quantum computing seems to be zeroed in on. So, what is old is new again. Intel, which was a dying foundry business, suddenly
it's back,
hot in the chips game, and
IBM coming back.
Now IBM is back.
Yeah, you wonder if Trump just has legacy positions in IBM and Intel from the 90s.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is
it's like let's just juice this.
I mean I don't know how many people really even talk about this anymore, but the original AI was Watson.
Yep.
I mean Watson notably competed on Jeopardy and was the first example of hallucinations, because there were a couple answers that were so confusing that I mean it was wild to watch, because they'd be like, this U.S. president did this, and it would just ask him, and Watson would just come up with something. It'd be like 1984. You know, there are notable huge swings and misses from Watson on Jeopardy, but he did dominate Ken and Brad. People forget Brad. Brad's sort of been lost to the to history generations, but I think he actually won more money than Ken. And I think he used that money to lose weight and become an actor. I think it was what he did, but I don't know if he's bid anything recently. He's notably been market corrected by our sweet princess Amy, who is the women's champion. Look it up. But yeah, Watson, IBM, quantum computing. We'll move on from there.
I don't know, I'm tired of even saying this, but it seems like maybe we're getting closer to an Iran deal, according to reporting from the Wall Street Journal and others. Trump continues to say they're talking to the right people. I will say that if, 9-10 weeks into this whole ordeal, fiasco, war, whatever we're calling it, this far in, when you're having to still reassure people that you're talking to the right people about a deal, it doesn't necessarily promote tons of confidence in my mind. But that's where we are. Trump and Netanyahu had a testy call on Tuesday night. Trump defending the diplomatic process. Netanyahu saying, what's the point of this? Iran's not going to abide by whatever conditions are, but potentially moving a little bit closer to a deal. Meanwhile, Raul Castro, charged with murder in the U.S., say they're not going to go get the old man, but...
Yeah, I don't really know. So I was reading into this yesterday. So basically there was a group of Cuban Americans who were flying around and in an aquatic plane, one that can land on water, and they were picking up people who were trying to escape Cuba actively. I guess there were a number of warnings that they were entering Cuban airspace, and then ultimately they got shot down and killed. Back in the day, there was, I guess, somebody who was charged and convicted of murder for this in 1974 or whatever this happened. But a lot of people are saying this is just an excuse. There's no real way to attach our boy Raul to it. He's 95 years old.
I mean, what are we doing?
I will say he's aged well, because there are a lot of pictures of him in the jungle doing guerrilla warfare with his brother Fidel. And he's an all-time weird-looking, 17-year-old to 20-year-old. Very strange-looking young man, but he just looks like every other old man. But that's really all I have to say about that.
Good for him.
I don't know. Is Cuba going to become the 51st state, or 52nd, or perhaps 53rd behind Canada? It's really hard to say at this point, but I think it bodes well for the Don Roe doctrine of having allies on this side of the world, and eliminating one from Russia would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, Trump says as president he's taking decisive action on behalf of this long-suffering corner of our hemisphere. So Somebody's got to be the good guy. And finally, we got Don stepping up in there.
People forget that's where Christopher Columbus landed.
Nobody's talking about
Hispaniola.
that. Yeah.
Did you know that, Klecker?
He landed in Cuba?
Yeah, he didn't actually land in the continental United States. He landed on
was it not the Dominican?
I thought he landed in Cuba. I may be wrong there.
I don't know. We'll do a fact check at some
He
point.
could have landed on the other side. He could have landed in Haiti, right?
Yeah. No telling.
Known. I'm not going to say it, but you know. Starts with an S.
Nvidia stock is basically flat, despite what seemed to be a pretty strong quarter. Klecker, how do you digest and assess their quarter?
Man, I mean, even if you look at the past couple quarters, they've sold off even completely after beat and raises. These numbers are just absolutely insane. I mean, 92% increase year-over-year revenue in data centers. I think you're really seeing these new Rubin chips or the Blackwell chips actually get implemented in these data centers. It's the same story that Nvidia has told the past couple years, where it's almost like with how expensive tokens are getting, with all of these big AI platforms going enterprise, it's like you are basically losing money if you do not go with us, because we are so much more efficient from the GPU perspective than any other competitors. And then another big thing for me, at least, was the big bear case, or some of the big bear cases. Was
Papa
that
Bear.
Nvidia is not going to be able to compete in the CPU market. Like, these GPUs are going to be taken over by CPUs, and now they're going to be basically set up as the biggest CPU supplier in the entire world. So
Shout out to the haters and
a lot of
losers.
winning from Nvidia.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to be tired of winning.
Now, the crazy thing is, like, because they're not up, they're functionally cheaper than they were yesterday. Just like the last earnings, when they were just like, hey, we made $1 gazillion and the stock went down. It's like, all right, well, now the valuation is much nicer. I mean, they're near all-time highs. I mean, they hit like 230 and change the other day. I mean,
they're just.
When does it end? I don't know when it ends.
And they haven't even, these Vera Rubin, like, full stack, these haven't even been implemented. They're designing the next generation that won't even go into data centers in 2 years, and when it happens, everyone's going to buy it.
Yeah.
And power's going to get cheaper again.
It's amazing to think about that quarterly release that they had maybe in 2021. That was just absolute gangbusters, and the stock was up like 25% that day. And we reran the valuation. It was like somehow they're cheaper. It's amazing to think that really kind of kickstarted this thing, and we're still talking about it 5 years later.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is, so I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So we were talking about how everything the government touches gets more expensive and drives inflation. Everything that government doesn't touch gets cheaper. And we used cell phones and TVs as an example. But in the history of the evolution of technology, like, you think of mills where they made clothing in the Industrial Revolution. Everyone's like, man, all these people are going to lose their jobs. But in reality, what it is, created a lot more jobs. And everywhere along the road where we've done this, the internet's going to eliminate so many jobs. People are going to be out of work, all this stuff. I tend to think that, like, there's a possibility that, and I don't know what these jobs look like, but AI might be on the front end just an absolute killing field for jobs, and it's starting to be. But I think that there's going to be a possibility that there's going to be so many more knock-on effects where people are making enormous amounts of money. And, everyone talks about, like, man, there's so many people in poverty. You look at the chart on world poverty. I mean, we're at, like, the lowest levels of all time. And in the 70s, it was like 40% of people made less than $1 a day, and now it's like 9%. And the ability to have compute anywhere, things like Starlink, which SpaceX, bringing the internet to the masses. I mean, there's still
no poverty on Mars.
Yeah. I mean, I just struggle to see a scenario where it's like there's not massive wealth creation from this. I mean, even just people who own Nvidia have gained enormous wealth off of this without having to participate in AI at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an unbelievable potentiality, but man, the haters and losers are just beside themselves right now, trying to shut down data centers. I mean, AOC and Bernie are trying to stop them.
Yeah, the data centers, I mean, it's like all I get videos of.
I mean, the innovation just on, we're going to have to generate more power. And that wasn't necessarily a problem 10 years ago, but now the smartest minds in the world who are working on AI and using AI are trying to be devising ways to generate more power more efficiently. And whether you do it by making the chips more efficient or you do it by making the power generation more efficient, like that's got to happen, and therefore it will because the market demands it. And so there's so many different things that could come from this. It's impossible to know what they are at the moment. But I mean, look at the internet. The internet took a lot of jobs out, and now, the biggest employers in the world are all internet companies. Now they're cutting 10% of headcount every couple of days.
But they're still the biggest employers.
But they're still huge employers, yeah.
Hitting a couple other random companies, and we'll close up with commentary on the Fed, Tom. Walmart down about 2%. Target had a nice acceleration and guide up previously. Walmart a little bit softer, getting hit a little bit on health insurance cost to the tune of about 23 basis points.
Killed on fuel costs, too.
Yeah, just
2.5% hit to operating margin on fuel costs. So they've been feeling that hard. Really good acceleration across the board on their new segments. So they rolled out this thing recently this quarter where they're using like the Sam's Clubs as the bases of distribution for a lot of businesses. They're like, we can get you your huge order for your business, all your snacks, all your drinks. It's going to be there in 30 minutes for one of our bases at Sam's Clubs. They're growing memberships through that, and their delivery and e-commerce has been scaling up pretty quickly too. I got to say, Walmart Plus, big fan. We use that quite a bit. Free delivery. It's very fast. I ordered a set of golf clubs as a goof for a buddy, and they showed up on my porch in like under 15 minutes from Walmart, and they were the wrong clubs. They were women's.
Nice.
So the
even better.
The goof got goofier, and my wife was very confused. The driver, unmarked vehicle, pulls up, drops off a set of women's golf club. And Amanda was kind of arguing with the lady of like, no, this isn't supposed to be here. But then I did exchange them and get the men's club, the Nitro Blaster XD, pretty nice. Full set of clubs for like $129.
Ooh.
I will say I watched him use the clubs, and when he hit that driver, it sounded like a putter.
Nice.
It's just so. Shout out to Walmart and their golf game. John Deere raising guidance, seeing some optimism in construction and forestry. So good news there. Avalon Bay is merging, really acquiring Equity Residential in an all-stock deal. We follow Avalon Bay a little bit. I don't follow it super closely, but does this move the needle for you, either of you guys?
They've kind of been struggling on the development side, so a lot of their new developments with where rates are right now have been struggling, especially in the Sun Belt. And I don't know too much about Equity Residential, but I'm sure they've been having some similar problems. So I think they're like, man, we're both our growth rates are going down. Let's come together and get some operational synergies going.
I think we're mostly out of Avalon Bay. We owned them for a fair amount, maybe 2 and 3 years ago, but we've mostly exited.
We got the Fed minutes. Tim Morrell saying if inflation persists, they're going to have to raise rates. Tom, any takeaways from the minutes?
They were pretty hawkish. There was a lot of the many voted in favor of leaned in favor of not having a cutting bias, and ultimately 2 people dissented on that. Obviously, Moran wanted to cut rates. I just don't think we see any cuts probably in the next 4 or 5 months, but I think there's going to be a day of reckoning where there's some sort of resolution and they need to. We're insanely restrictive right now.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually listening to a presentation yesterday on the fixed income markets and just talking about the massive opportunity with where we are in real rates. If you think of restrictiveness, having positive real rates means that you're making, just by buying a bond, you're making a natural risk-free, they're talking about treasuries here, so you can technically say it's a risk-free security, return over inflation at every tenor. And we're as high as we've been for the longest sustained period in more than 2 decades. And so the opportunity in bonds right now is just unbelievable. From a real inflation-adjusted return, you can make nice returns just by buying treasuries. And then when you start adding spread on top of that, by buying things like corporates, mortgages, you can start to really make equity-like returns over a long period of time. And then, of course, long munis, even then adding the tax efficiency piece on that. And so, they were basically saying, and this is an interesting way of framing it, which is that if you buy long bonds now at 5% and things get worse, which they could, and they sort of have over the last couple of weeks from a rates perspective, they go higher, you will be losing money it the most wise way you can.
Yeah, it's the
which
best
is
way to lose money.
And I've been trying to think, bond math is so hard to explain to people because it's really just a different way of thinking. But, one way to think about it is if you buy a 5-year bond that yields 5%, as long as that bond does not default, you will make 25%. And a lot of people think, well, I should make 5% every year. And that's not necessarily the case because rates move. But what you do know is that in that 5-year period, you will make a 25% return. So if, bonds sell off in the first 2 years and you're just flat, that means in the next 3 years, you will make that 25% return. And so that's when you start to think about the 30-year, that's a 150% plus return if you're buying over 5%. And that might not happen in the first 5 years, but if rates drop, you might get 5 of those years up front. They may move, you might get 5 full years of return in a very short period of time and say, you knock off 30% of that return. Well, you still have 100% return waiting for you and you're up. And so the math is so in your favor because there's basically so much air in the balloon, and how quickly it comes out depends on how rates move and the length of that bond. And so it's just an unbelievable opportunity where it's just like, not only are you getting 5 on something that's risk-free, you can now get 6 on some of these investment-grade corporates in the 10-year range. And so suddenly you can start to be like, I'm going to make a 60% return on this bond. I'm going to make a 70% return on this bond. I'm going to make a 100% return on this bond. The timeline is amorphous, but that's the return. That's how bonds work is exactly how much money you're going to make over a time period, but might not make it in a straight line.
Yep.
And so that's something to think about, which is just you're just building your forward-loading returns for a long period of time above and beyond inflation, which is elevated. But if it comes down,
that spread widens.
Yeah, your real return actually increases. And so it's so hard to articulate that. And I'll be honest, I'm not doing as good a job as the guy on this call yesterday, but it's really something that I think is worth thinking about right now.
It's a good opportunity. All right, we'll wrap it up there. We'll be back tomorrow. Hope you guys have a great day. Talk to you soon.